Y'all, welcome back to My First Kicks. This is episode 176, and this week I welcome Kofie Yeboah to the podcast. Now, if you aren't familiar with Kofie, he's part of the amazing team at Secret Base, SB Nation, Vox, all that stuff. And he's also a streamer. And if you've seen him on TikTok or on YouTube, he's mostly talking about sports. I love his content. So this, to me, is and was a great conversation. Now, just a full disclaimer, we didn't get super sneakerhead about it, but I wanted a different perspective of content creation in a space and finding your voice in a specific space that had nothing to do with sneakers, because Kofie's content and the way Kofie grows his following is so pure to him and his ideologies that I find it more in the lane of what I want to do with this podcast. Now, if you aren't sure, or this may be your first time listening, I've done a lot of soul searching on trying to, I mean, look, they're even trying to find me right now. I've done a lot of soul searching on what I wanted my content to be like. And I don't necessarily call myself a content creator. If you want to go and listen to my conversation with Rainey, I talk about how I find content creating boring, and it's more because I love the type of content that Kofie does, where it's a conversation and also a like a learning, like you're just learning and you're hearing about deep dives. Like, shout out to James, who does amazing work, and FD Signifier also does amazing work on YouTube. That's the type of content that I want to do in sneakers. And after this conversation with Kofie, I feel like I know where I'm going. And if you've been following me for 3 years or you've listened to the last episode and you hear me, struggling with what I want to do with my content and struggling with how I find my progression in this space, please know I evergreen my content because I want to be able to, do 5 episodes in a week and then have 5 weeks to just do whatever I want and not have to be tied down to do an episode. So I do that in the ways of trying to always have content out and be consistent. Shout out to Ryan Sickler, who taught me this, and so that's my boy. And so that's what I do. And I will say, because of that, sometimes you'll hear me relent or talk about why I'm not moving in a specific pace that I thought I would be moving, or that this podcast would just take off and I'm getting, sponsored deals and all this and that, and, everything's on a network and I'm good to go. No, not how it works. It's also the nature of when I have these conversations. It's whatever's on my mind. I'm always talking about it because this is what this podcast is about. I'd rather use it as a platform to see how people get to where they're going while talking about my frustrations of where I am right now. So, and how all of that intertwines with sneakers. So if this is your first time listening, keep that in mind when you go back. But if you've been listening for several years, shout out to you, because you've definitely hear me and have heard me just relent on, like, where am I going? How am I doing this? But like I said, this episode with Kofie just got me on the straight and narrow. I know what I want to do now. I have a clear picture of where I'm going, and you'll be seeing a lot of that. No more of this nonsense of me jumping in to making TikTok videos and trying to make jokes and this and that. If I do make a joke, it's going to be a well thought out skit. If I'm going to make content, it's going to be all well thought out. So now that's what I'm working with, and shout out to Kofie for helping me get on that path. So on to where you can find Kofie. You can find him on everything Secret Base. I implore you to watch his Fumble Dimensions. He has recently he just did a series called MVP, where he mixes, you know, well, no, it's Peyton Manning has a 99 overall rating in 6 straight Maddens in a row. So now he's like trying to figure out which one's the best. Very interesting. Shout out to him. I mean, I love his work, like I said, and you're gonna hear how many flowers. I mean, I might as well showed up with a bouquet of flowers because I've always like since he started, I've been watching him, and he's one of my favorites. So this is a huge honor having him on. At Kofie Y on Twitch, go hit him with a follow and a sub if you wanna throw wet his beak a little bit. You know what I mean? And also, if you're following, I think it's Kofie Y on Instagram, and also it's just Kofie on Twitter or X. But of course, everything will be in the description of this podcast and the description of the YouTube video, which I hope you're watching. And also, you know where to find your boy. I am Who Was Haas on all social medias. Follow the podcast on My First Kicks Pod. Follow the podcast and no, I was gonna say subscribe. Well, is it subscribe? Whatever. On YouTube, I'm trying to get that up to 500 so I can get a little bit of chunk of change. I'm trying to also wet my beak here, but it's important as I try to grow this podcast. It's just the nature of the beast here. Would love for if you could share this with anybody that you've seen or hear or may know. Like, this is the most non-sneakerhead version of this podcast, so this is the easiest way to just jump in on this. Just like, yo, mom, check this out. Guys, cool. They talk a little bit about sneakers, but it's a very cool episode. Like, get it in there. And also, hit me with the like on the video if you're watching this on YouTube. And on TikTok, My First Kicks Pod on Instagram. If you have a My First Kick story, hit me up. I would love to read it to a guest. myfirstkickspod@gmail.com. And on to this week's guest, Kofie. Hey, Kofie, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, man, this is a big honor because, well, first, I watch a lot of your videos. A lot of your videos, and then for Iffy to just throw us in a group chat together, it was like, this is it's like, I don't know if you ever had a moment where you ever met somebody that you were following, and then you're just like, I did not realize how much I actually spend time with this guy. Now I actually can have like an actual conversation with him, and then I don't use this time at all to have these conversations.
Right, exactly. I think if he putting us in that chat, I think I was originally there because I had downloaded Street Fighter 6,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like a fighting game, and then sneaker head chat, but I'm not a sneakerhead at all. So I was just sometimes y'all be dropping in shoes, and I'm like, I don't understand the significance, the importance of it. I like how they look cool and everything, but I feel like
Yeah.
there's just so much for me like to keep up with that the shoes has never been my forte because my parents were always like, you get one shoe a year, you get like 2 shoes a year. And I went to a private school that had uniforms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't really, you had to look fly, you had to match the outfit. Like I could only wear like 3 different colors ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the
You
shoes
didn't get
never
the
really
freedom.
mattered.
You didn't get the
No,
freedom of like, oh, you get to wear whatever sneaker with the uniform.
I mean, you could, but at the time, I never put that much thought into it. I think everything sneaker wise is like that I've ever liked has come from just like playing organized sport, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
like you, it would be like basketball shoes or track spikes. I got big into track spikes in terms of
Mm-hmm.
just like trying to analyze because it's like I compare it to like Beyblades and everything because every spike, has like a different weight or different
Mm-hmm.
stability. And if you're a sprinter versus a long jumper, you're going to need different type of spikes. So I got very fascinated by that, but I was never, everyone talks about like sneakers app losses.
Mm-hmm.
I have
Yeah.
never downloaded that app,
Well,
because I just know that that's such I know that once I get into if I ever get into shoes, I could not, like, stop, and it's gonna, like, keep on like I would have like a whole closet full because I am a collector at the end of the day.
Right.
So
Yeah. I mean, shoot, if this episode might start like put a bug in you if this
it
was
might.
the start of this, you're gonna be like, okay, like maybe I might try to, or like you'll be like, yo, help me just get this, and then I'll be like, here you go, you know. because because that's what happens in my, I mean, I mention my Discord on here like maybe like once in a handful, but nobody's ever asked for the link or nothing like that. But usually in there, this Discord I'm in, it's part of this old podcast I used to follow called Get Up On This. I don't know if you ever listened to this.
Mm-mm.
And so we started a Discord, or somebody started a Discord. I jumped in, and then now I took it over. Me and my other friend, we used to host a copycat of that podcast, and then I got the podcast bug from starting that podcast, and now we're here to my own podcast, right?
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, that in that Discord, there's always a message. Somebody, shout out to the homie Sean. He always messages me and be like, "Hey, I don't know what this shoe is. Can you find this shoe for me?" And then it's like 2 seconds later, here you go, bam. And he's like, "All right, I bought it." And I was like, "Okay, like
Like it's Shazam.
yeah,
He'll be like, okay, this shoe looks like this, and then someone's gonna, okay, wow,
yeah, that's
that's
me
that's
basically."
extensive knowledge right there.
I am. It's funny because like I've been thinking about it, and in terms of just like the form of your content and why I really enjoy it is like I've been wanting to get into it, and I've been teasing it on here because I love short form. Well, short form. I like video essays, and you do a style of video essay, but it's more of just like stream of consciousness, and that's what I wish I can do that. But I
Mm.
know if I try, I would just be meandering and not get to the point.
Now that's the perfect thing about YouTube and editing is that there are times where I do not get to the point, and then I cut about 4 minutes of that entire. So it looks like I have a coherent thought the entire time, but no, it is absolutely like my brain's on a treadmill. It just like keeps on going. Yeah, that's the beauty
That's
of YouTube. That's why I mean I stream a little bit, but I
it.
don't do it as much. But streaming and then shooting for YouTube is such a different school of thought, even
Yeah.
though it's considered like the same form of content at times, you know?
Yeah, and so I really want to jump into that because I feel like I can convey, like do what you do, like just cut out the me meandering part into me getting to the topic of what the episode's going to be about, whatever, and do that. But it's all about it takes so much time because I have to do that, then edit it myself, and then do that. But I'm also doing this, and I'm also working, so it's just
Right.
like, how do I find the time to do what I want to do? I have like a million ideas of what I want to do that can actually help people who find it and are into sneakers while I'm not, and also be funny about it. But it's all about how do I push myself to do it. But I say that, and basically on the topic of meandering, to go to basically ask you to introduce yourself because we didn't get to that part. That's a plug your stuff.
So my name is Kofie Yeboah. I am a content creator. I work at Secret Base. The YouTube channel has over about 1 million subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been fun to work on that team with I think it's about 14, 15 people. I also do my own personal YouTube, TikTok, Twitch content stuff as well. And you guys can follow me at Kofie on Twitter, Kofie, at Kofie Y on TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, and then my Kofie Yeboah is on my Instagram handle. And I kind of talk about a little bit of everything, but I mainly focus on sports and sports video games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I remember I found that the first video I ever found of you, and I was like, I think I think I was more amazed by you having the patience to go through the entire NBA 2K, like, is it I don't know if it's the roster itself or the draft, or no, I think you simulated so that it was only just the entire, like everybody just like it was just like a land of normal people
Right. We
basically.
kept funneling a draft class of some of the worst basketball players in terms
Mm-hmm.
of we created all of them. We kept funneling that draft class in repeatedly until that was the entire league, and we decided
Hmm.
to see what that season was like. And I think I made that about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That was my debut on the channel too.
Right. Yeah.
That was my debut on the YouTube channel,
Young
and I
Kofi.
and I keep remembering the day before. I keep remembering I was just like, "Oh, what if everybody hates it? What about, it's a million subscribers, and I'm a new face." Like, SB Nation Secret Base has been around for like
Hmm.
5, 6, 7 years, and it was a daunting debut, but I think that we won them over definitely with the video ideas, and just honestly having my sort of style, but not trying to be another style. I think that
Hmm.
that always like has helped me in terms of being like, hey, if this video is not for you, then I can sit here and be like, hey, I didn't try to make it for you.
Hmm.
I would take more offense to it if someone didn't like my video, if I was trying to be somebody I'm not. And now,
Right.
oh, well, maybe I could have won you over if I had just been myself. I don't want to like ever think like that. So yeah, those videos take a long time, but at the same time, there's been such an overwhelmingly positive response, which I think for an internet for some of the internet stuff, it's like very rare. Not rare, but it's very you don't take it for granted. You
Hmm.
don't take the fact that like people like what you do, like that always like hits home, honestly.
No, yeah, that I mean, perfectly said. Because I mean, but it also leads to when that day when you were like, somebody was just like, "Is Kofi in this chat?" And I was like, "No," and then you were like, "Yeah," and I had like a moment of like, it was like, "Yo, I've been watching this dude forever." So it's
I mean, yeah, for a while I was like, I don't know Eddie Woods. You know how I get added to a group chat, but everybody I guess has like already introduced themselves already like
yeah.
4 or 5 times. I think that was when I got added, and then like time passed, and like I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't know. I could figure out who's who over time, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean that was like a super funny moment, and then I had to stop myself from being like, all right, because this is when you started dropping, when what's the last, when you did like, I always call it like the Elam simulation, because
Oh,
like that
Elam,
was like,
the Elam ending.
yeah, but it was,
Yeah.
but that series, and it was like middle of the season. I was like always hesitant to be like, "Yo, can I get like the last two episodes?" I was like, I wanted to finish it so bad because I was so hyped for it
Hey,
every week.
hey man, when those released, though, they weren't even. If you were asking for episodes that were not finished yet. That was a rolling delivery system.
Man, I mean that was your Fumble Dimensions are like the best to watch, like
I
especially like,
appreciate it.
yeah. Shout out to everybody that works on it. But you're here to answer the question that I ask everybody each week, and that question is, what's your first kicks? What's that first pair of sneakers you absolutely needed to have?
So those are two different questions, I think.
You think
Right?
so?
It's yeah. I think that those are because my first pair of shoes that I really remember is when I used to go to this place. Might not be Rack Room Shoes or Ari's, some shoe warehouse in North Carolina, right?
Hmm.
And my parents have always been like, "Oh, you get like one or two new pairs of shoes a year." And me, I prioritize color over what the shoe is, what it looks like. So I saw these Adidas shoes, and the where the stripes are supposed to be,
Hmm.
it's clear. But what you could
Mm.
do is you had these
You could,
color
the
panels.
little tabs, and you can put them in there
Yeah.
and change the
I
color. Yeah.
I do not know what those shoes are called, but I thought that they were the coolest things ever. Like,
Uh,
it was 50, 60 something dollars, and I was like, "Wow, it's like I bought 12 pairs of shoes right now." Because I prioritize the color stuff. I've
I
never
think
been
I think they were shell toes, right?
I
Let me
think
see. Let's see. Cause like I see, see, this is what I was talking about. About like, people will just tell me about a shoe, and I will tell you which shoe is it. Yeah, it's called the Adidas Addy Color.
Addy
They were
color, okay.
they were hold on. Or also they did, so they did it on a couple models, but
Mhm.
So I don't know, maybe if you remember this, but was the front of the shoe hard?
Yes, I don't think I remember. I don't remember the shell. I don't remember them being shell toes. I remember them being like
Okay.
very basic shoes. And I bought a black pair and I bought a white pair.
Okay.
And I think those were the first time. So I remember like getting shoes that I actually liked and cared about. I feel like every other time we went shoe shopping, it wasn't really. I never really felt anything about it
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not. Again, I'm more of a. I have more of a fascination with like cool socks than cool shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like I can get these shoes, but if I get like white shoes or black shoes, but if I get a lot of stance socks,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of cool colors or cool stuff about the socks, I'm more into that because it feels like interchangeable in terms of just like, okay, I have this shirt, I have this, oh, I could wear these socks to go with a pretty complementary color that my shoes will always be. So I've always prioritized that. Now, the shoes that I remember that I first wanted, like the first
Mm-hmm.
like I was trying to like get these shoes for a long time. I ran track
Mm-hmm.
in high school from like 2010 to 2013. And my senior year of track, I had won the state championship in the 100 twice, and I was trying to go for like a three-peat, but I was also trying to get a college scholarship. So I was trying my best to get the best shoes on the market. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that the best spikes on the market. And that's one of the things that in the season prior I wasn't like taking serious
Mm-hmm.
because my sophomore year I ran track. I ran in these Nike. They looked cool, but it just my feet would hurt after I ran, which is not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Right? I'm running 100s. I'm running 200s. I'm not like running 5Ks or whatever. And
100,
then
meters for people who are listening. 100 meters,
yeah,
200
100
meters.
meters. Yeah. Sorry for. And then I remember switching to Adidas, which the Adidas
Yeah.
shoes the Adidas spikes that I first bought they were fine, but they were so cheaply made that
Mm-hmm.
they like broke by the summer. Like I ripped a hole in them. So I decided to go for what was then marketed as the lightest spikes. So they were called Adi Zero Prime SPs.
Mm.
And these were, I think they're the same spikes that Tyson Gay wore in in like the London Olympics, or he wore. I think they're the same spikes that he wore at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And these were shoes that were 3.5 ounces. The spikes were so light, and I remember saving my money to buy these spikes because I was like, okay, this is how like I'm taking this seriously. I'm getting these sprinter spikes. I want to feel like I have everything to put towards breaking the school record in the 100, which I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't done yet,
Mm-hmm.
and qualifying for a 200-meter. Because in track to get a scholarship back then or partial scholarship, there were like times that you had to break to be like
Yeah.
considered. And I had the 100 one down, but the 200 one I did not have. So I remember buying these spikes and I wrote down all of the sprint times that I needed. I wrote them down in marker on the spikes.
That's crazy.
So I was I didn't but I was then like I got injured and the season didn't go the way it did, but that is the first
Mm.
story where it's like I'm glad that I tried my best and didn't try to cut corners in terms of buying all the equipment that I needed to perform at my best.
Yeah.
And I think that that's more of my like sneaker spike story. That's one of the few that I have. And then because other ones come from just like being bad in AAU basketball and all of that. So
But you played, well, you played. Were you like a multi-sport athlete, or were you just strictly track and field at that time?
So I came into high school. In middle school, I played soccer once. I played basketball for 3 years, and then I
Hmm.
played baseball. Loved baseball cleats as well. Well, baseball is more fascinated with like the different baseball bats than the cleats
Right. Yeah.
at
Everything
at
all
that time.
expensive. You're picking the most expensive sports to play in.
Oh yeah, for sure. You're not, yeah, for sure. It took me a while to like realize just how expensive baseball is and
Hmm.
all of that. And I when it came to all of these cleats at the time, I would be like, okay, this is the East Bay. This is the one with the shoe that had the whole page dedicated to it. Oh, this is the new cool. So I knew my parents wouldn't get that because of the high price.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, maybe if we get like the third or fourth, we could try to bargain for that.
Hmm. And the school
But
didn't provide like, oh, hey, we get, these shoes or,
for
you know, we,
basketball, we were told we had team shoes, right? So the first
hmm.
ones I remember they were either Nike Shocks,
Hmm.
like the
Wow.
Nike Shocks,
Yeah.
and now looking back, playing basketball in Shocks I think is nuts.
What? Vince Carter did it for so many years.
I know, but I remember once I put that shoe on when I was a kid, and I was like,
Hmm.
I don't, I don't, I don't like, I just didn't like the feel, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the next year it was the Hyper Dunks. I like the Hyper Dunks a lot.
Hyper dunks. I really like the hyper dunks. Yeah. I
Hyper
still have a
Dunks,
pair. I have a pair of. So I'm getting back into playing basketball every week now.
yeah.
So I've been rotating sneakers out, and so I recently had my Linsanity hyper dunks, and I was just like, I'll put those on and see how I do in those.
Mm.
Don't hold up, man. I'll tell you that they feel totally different. They did not hold up.
They didn't hold up. Oh man, that's tough. And I think so. When I got to high school, did not make either basketball team
Hmm.
because our this is North Carolina. They're about their basketball. They sent people to like Duke,
Yeah.
Louisville, etc. So if this is one of those things where if you like didn't make the high school team, it was just okay. You understand that they're really about it here, and I didn't really take offense to that.
Yeah.
It hit me. It hit me hard because at the time I had never ran track before, and I knew I was
Hmm.
athletic, and I knew I could put it towards something if I like, but I just didn't know what. Whether it was trying to, I was so close to playing lacrosse.
Hmm.
Thinking back to it now, I'm glad I
Why were
went
you
with
so
track.
fixated on sticking to sports?
I think because I loved sports and it was something to do. I mean, I'm an only child in Raleigh, North Carolina. There wasn't really I wasn't really a hang out at the mall kid, or that was never me. All of my friends were also athletes in some capacity, whether it's football, wrestling,
Hmm.
baseball, right? So it was on top of it being something to do, it's also just like making friends and like a sense of community outside of sitting in classes all day or whatnot.
Yeah.
So I was always trying to, and also my parents were on me for a while about like applying to scholarships and applying. I was like, okay, if I could, the dream was always, okay, if I could get a college scholarship for athletics for like maybe I work towards that. And they're like, what about the grade stuff? And I'm like, what about the athletic stuff? So
Mhm.
we had so much static about that for years,
Yeah.
which understandable, because they were percentage wise, odds wise, they were completely right. There's no
Hmm.
defense on the history test. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I get that, but at the same time, it was always
Imagine if there
like,
was.
imagine, hey,
I feel like a
yeah,
lot of math tests have a lot of defense on me.
you're right. Full court press permutations and whatnot. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that was when, since I wasn't playing a sport, well, high school, I stopped playing every other sport organized except for track. That's when I was just like, okay, all of my all of my money or whatever is going to track spikes versus like I'm not buying $130 basketball shoes to go play, not like high school organized. That was my thought process at the time.
Yeah.
So it was what it was, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
What's up, y'all? So I'm jumping in this week's episode to talk about SoulSafe. It's a new mobile app that doubles as a hub for the sneaker community. You can do pretty much anything and everything that deals with sneakers, from cataloging your collection or tracking the value of your collection, or even getting their industry leading sneaker insurance, which protects you from basically anything like storage theft. And of course, you've heard it on here on this podcast, things like flooding. And they launched a marketplace for everyone to buy, sell, and trade. That's mad dope. So, what's really dope about that is that there are no fees through the end of June. But what I love most about SoulSafe is that they are building for and with the community. None of that taxing or charging you to join, especially when you're just trying to add kicks to your collection or even do anything. Just join the community, plug in your collection, and tap in with SoulSafe. So, if you want to help the pod, and please, I know that you do because I know that you're listening, use my promo code PPOQA5 or tell them My First Kicks pod sent you when you sign up. There will be a drop down or click something that will tell you how did you find, or ask you how did you find about this podcast, and there you go. But I implore you to do that because this is the start of something special and we are on the ground floor. So use my code PPOQA5 and tell them My First Kick sent you, because as we start building your collection, or as we start building our collections on the app, we start building our community on the app. So make sure you put in that promo code and support the pod. But now, back to the episode. The So I've never put on a pair of spikes. I've never ran track. I've been a basketball kid all my life. Basketball, some soccer here and there. Well, football. I'm half Brazilian, so that's where that comes from. But it always looked, because like when I'd go to Marshalls or something like that, they would have some spikes there. So I would pick them up and be like, what is this? They're always super light, but I've never understood how spikes work. Like I know you clip in at the start, and then you're off to the races after that once the gun gets shot. If I don't know if they still shoot guns, but whatever. You know, so I need some explanations of how track spikes work.
So track spikes, when you have the spike, the shoe, we call the entire shoe the spike, but I'm going to say like the shoe part. The spikes you screw in, right? You don't when you buy the spikes, there are certain spikes there's certain like mini spikes that will go into this part of the shoe. Now, for different types of events, there are different types of spikes. I'm not sure what the correlation is for each one, but for sprint spikes, they're only in the front part of the shoe. Whereas if you're a jumper, the shoe might be different. If you're a thrower, I'm kind of blanking on if you're a thrower. I don't think you wear spikes when you're a thrower, unless it's like javelin or something. I don't know. I'm not really like the foremost, but all I knew is like sprint spikes. They're meant to be just light because when you're a sprinter, you run in a certain way to where your heel is not trying to touch the ground as much as possible. You're kind of like trying to like just. So that's why like the spikes are really important.
I did not know that. I thought it was heel toe.
No,
No,
it's not.
toe heel.
Oh, sorry, they're not. They're on. Yeah, they're on the toe part, not the heel
Yeah.
part. There are no. The ones I had, at least, there were no spikes where the heel is.
Yeah, the ones I was looking at, like it didn't even have any, like to me, the back piece doesn't even look like a sole. Like it looks like all the metal is towards the front, like towards the front to the midfoot, and then it just becomes like Like I don't even. It doesn't look comfortable at all to me.
It's not supposed to be comfortable. That's the thing. You're not. I mean,
Hmm.
and the thing is with these spikes, they're not for walking. They're not for cutting. They're
Hmm.
not for you think of all the movements in basketball, right?
Hmm.
You're in track, you are either running a curve or running, but you're doing it with the technique. And a lot of these spikes are help to optimize that technique. And you want the shoe to be as light as possible, but also as functional as possible. So it's a really like delicate thing with that. And that's why the 3.5 shoes, the
Hmm.
3.5 ounces spikes were such a big deal, because usually the ones I ran in were usually like 5 ounces or 7 ounces or whatnot. And I don't know if it makes like the world of difference, but there there was a part that made me like believe that,
That's all
hey,
you need.
if I'm wearing lighter spikes, anything matters, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what the spikes thing is. And then you're for also this is probably a rule, but it you're you only wear those spikes on the track.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I'm not There was a track meet in Wake Forest. I will never forgive them for this. They made the sprinters. They made the sprinters put their track spikes on,
Oh
right?
man. Yeah.
But it was a summer track meet, which was like, so there's like hundreds of like thousands of people running, right? So they have to expedite
Hmm.
the process as quickly as possible. They were making they're making like sprinters. Sometimes there's a part that was concrete. They're making sprinters walk on the concrete with the spikes, which
Oh man.
you're not supposed
No.
to. That's
Definitely not. Yeah.
that's not like optimal, and that's not ideal. So that part of it always frustrated me when someone was like walking. If whenever I saw someone walking with their spikes like on concrete, I'm like, no, 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 no. Like grass is like fine. It's
Hmm.
still, but but this shoe is made for concrete. I'm sorry.
Not concrete.
This shoe is not made for concrete. This shoe is
Yeah.
made for the track,
Yeah.
and that's basically it, right?
Hmm. That's crazy. Like
Yeah.
because you're damaging the spikes, and then you're not gonna have that same
Yeah.
grip on the track. So
Yeah. It's just not
that's
what it's
wild.
just not what the spike was made for. Like
Hmm.
that's what that is.
Yeah. So when you went to college, were you like, what made you? I want to know the shift. So basically, you did you get the scholarship to go to college? That's I think we.
No, I did not.
Okay.
I didn't run track in college. I injured my hamstring my senior year, and then I like just sat back and was like, do I really like
Hmm.
why am I doing track? Am I doing it because I actually want to be like the best in the world, or is it just because I want to? And in college, when you're a college athlete, like that is like your full part time, like full time, part time, basically job. And I'm like, track was something that after high school it was cool to do like for 1 or 2 hours a day, but I wasn't
Hmm.
trying to like wake up at 6 in the morning, do stadium stairs, then weight lift, then tutoring, then like I wasn't trying to do all that. So after that, I switched back to like the pickup basketball scene. Like I wasn't like running, like I didn't use track as a workout
Hmm.
or anything like that. So that's when I stopped really caring about like what shoes I had, what shoes I wore, because I was just like,
Hmm.
okay, as long as they work. And at this is at the time where I'm like paying for everything, right?
Right.
I'm not like asking my parents. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to be smart with smart with this money too. So
What was your first job?
my first job outside of college,
Mm,
my first job outside of college was working as social media manager at SB Nation.
okay.
And so this was right out of college. So I was living in Washington D.C.,
Hmm.
right? So it wasn't like I had that much like free money to spend on, and
Yeah, yeah.
I was
Washington
playing
D.C. is
video
pretty
games.
expensive.
Yeah, it
Hmm.
is like it's not a. So I was just like, okay, so I'm gonna, I got this PS4. I'm gonna spend it on some games, of course, and then I wanted to have a time. I wanted this like the Yeti Nano microphone. So that was like
Hmm.
another $99, and then
Hmm.
yeah, I get the pop filter, and like I have so much like tech equipment now. That those are my sneakers. Honestly, those are my sneaker stuff. Like if I get a new microphone or like a new keyboard or something like that, Like that's my like spending habits versus like
Hmm.
if it's like shoes, it's like okay, what does Adidas have? Okay, we'll get some of those. You know,
I'm gonna start sending you stuff. Be like,
you
this
gotta
is what
start
you.
sending me stuff. It's not going. I'm not going to be like I'm not going to drop everything because my spending habit, my collection is jerseys, like
Right. Yeah.
hockey
Yeah.
jerseys. Like that's
Mhm.
my like because I feel like that's a little bit more practical for me sometimes than having a bunch of shoes
I
that I
mean,
know that I'm going to mess up.
you can have a lot of people that I've met, and one of my closest friends is actually he collects both hockey jerseys and sneakers, and like his collection is absolutely bananas. So you can have
But
that problem.
between that and retro video games
Hmm.
is a lot because retro video games are expensive too.
For sure, for sure. I
Like
mean, I'm well. A little bit about me is that like if you didn't know or did know, but I grew up where I had to pick sneakers or video games, and I always picked video games. So that's where like my super extensive knowledge of video games stuff like that. But then I
yeah,
also had to be Mr. Okay, I have to pick and choose when I jump in to get sneakers because I'm gonna miss out on the video game. Or like
yeah.
I'll beg my best friend and be like, "Yo, you have to get this game so I can play it because I'm trying to get these sneakers." Like we'll do one of those. So so yeah, like, and also I'm an only child as well, so like that's where like that
Mhm.
like when you have a best friend I grew up with since I was 4, that we can do that. Like, all right, you get SNES, I'll get Genesis, and then we'll just parallel as much as we can till we get to where we start affording our stuff ourselves.
Oh,
Like that.
I never did that system with like a friend where it's like you get this, I get this, we'll trade, and I never did that honestly.
That you got. Well, start now.
Hey,
Get
look,
some find a same size friend, same size shoe friend, and be like, let's go back and forth and see if you can get sneakers and I can get the games and I'll lend you the games, you lend me the sneakers.
no, that's a good idea. That's a great idea. That's the best. That's wow. I never thought about it like that honestly.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll be because me and Iffy are the same size, so I'll be like, yo.
Mm.
Sometimes he gets some cool stuff. I'll be like, yo, you gotta let me wear those once or twice, just like. He's
You're
always
right.
like,
You're right.
no.
That's what
He's
friends
always
are
like,
for.
no.
That's what friends
Nah,
are for.
he's always like, no. So that's not how it happens.
Oh.
But so then, like, I'm curious about your journey through to where you are now because the I feel like, especially now, content creation is. I feel like what everybody's always talking about. Oh, I'm gonna be a content creator. Be a content creator. But it's like is hard for a person to start and see that that's what happens when you see other people just instantly start and then bam, they're already 100,000 followers and such. But when you talk about, could you talk a little bit about your like grind to where you are now?
Yeah, for sure. Like I've been at this content creation stuff, I guess, for about 5, 6 years, technically.
Hmm.
And I've never wanted to be an overnight success or
Hmm.
overnight sensation because I feel like as quick as those people rise, they could also just be ignored, right? In
Hmm.
terms of like thinking about people that became memes or something like that. It's it's also super extra. Like it's also like a lot of work to like keep that many people's attention permanently forever,
Hmm.
right? So I'd rather gradually just be like, hey, this is me, this is what I do. If there's one video or there's one short form video, one TikTok that gets you to follow, then I appreciate it. It's cool. And I think that we're in an era where I don't think we've had an era where there has been someone that has been a content creator their whole life, right?
Hmm.
From like 19 to like 80, right? Where it's like, yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, so
we gotta see how well Andy Milonakis gets to 80. Then
he's
we can.
close. He's the closest one. I think that's fair. There is a generation. There is a couple of generations of like first day YouTubers. I get that for
Mhm.
sure, and like people, yeah. But I think that the thing is that for me, content I never really see as like a race to like a million followers. Like I'm not racing to have these milestones or whatever,
Mhm.
because I don't see myself not making videos or not being creative after a certain age or whatever. So that's why I've always just tried to take things slow and especially work in evergreen content in terms of like if you find a video that I made 8 years ago, I still want it to be like as relevant as possible.
Mhm.
So for secret base, a lot of my content is meant to be evergreen, and that's a good YouTube strategy that we've done for the channel. Now, for my personal YouTube channel, it's a lot less evergreen, I think, if I'm trying to be more consistent. But
Mhm.
there are certain parts of like the sports video game part where I'll talk about an old feature, like that kind of history stuff that I'm always confident will definitely be like cyclable in terms of like, hey, if
Mhm.
you see it in like 3 years, because sometimes a YouTube, like sometimes you'll go on YouTube and you'll be recommended a video from 4 years ago, right? I like that about YouTube versus when like TikTok isn't going to show you a video in your For You page from like 2 years ago. They're not going
It's
to do
not
it.
even gonna show you a video from 2 seconds ago. So
Right, exactly. And I like that a little bit more,
Mhm.
and that's why I'm trying to be more consistent in terms of just like dropping videos on YouTube, keep going and all of that. So I that's like my content creation philosophy. And my
Mhm.
thing is that I was afraid to start content creation for about like a couple of years. I was afraid when this went back when the YouTube dislike button could like the dislike bar could show up all red.
Mhm.
Right. You think of the Rebecca Black Friday video and it's just like all like a Sith Lord lightsaber under the video.
Yeah.
I was afraid of that for a while, but
Mhm.
then I realized, you know what? Who cares? Like as long as you're making stuff that's true to yourself and it's not like offensive or whatever, and not like you're not trying to get a rise out of people or whatever. Like I'm like go do it. Like try to be as creative as possible because the world could always use more creativity,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
what are your feelings about like negative based content? Because I feel like, especially on TikTok, a lot of it is more of people being negative on purpose in order to get people, or even on top of that, misleading. So, like, I mean, recently I don't know if you know about Life and Scars guy, that Life and Scars
I
guy.
don't I don't know who that
That
is.
guy is he's absolutely bananas, but he has a crazy following, and it's all like him being super misogynistic, and it gets played like he gets tons of millions of views off of this, but the idea of like his idea of like I'm gonna just make negative content because I know that people are gonna be like outraged by it, so then they're gonna keep watching it just or interacting with it in order for you to keep recycling it.
I think for me, honestly, that would weigh on me so much
Hmm.
miserable. It would make me so miserable, honestly. It would make me as someone that makes like not the most negative. I don't make like super negative content, but like there'll be like times where you like make jokes on Twitter or whatever you do. But if I'm constantly waking up every day trying to see the worst in things,
Hmm.
I would not enjoy this process at all.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that,
Right.
I have to because you have to put on that mask every day
Hmm.
and be the internet villain, and you're gonna tell me that doesn't you don't feel some type of way after you hit send on the video or anything like that. It could not be me. I'll say that.
Hmm.
Like when it comes from either like strictly negative content or like grifting, like that,
Hmm.
I like that can't. I just don't understand how people can just like be like, "Yep, this is my I have to," and you have to keep that up. You can't like
Right.
rebrand. You can't just do all this negative stuff and then rebrand as like, "Hey, I'm making this kind of content now." No one's gonna because you already
I'm making cooking content now.
yeah because you already built such a volatile fan base that is
Right.
like actively looking for. They've been looking for something like this. They're not gonna when as soon as it's I'm not gonna say that as soon as you change, they'll leave, but I think that when you pigeonhole yourself into that kind of niche and that kind of style of content, it's really hard to climb out of that hole. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. For
So
sure.
it's just never been for me. Also, it would be wild because people think that like it'd be wild that how some of this stuff is like people think that people keep being like the internet's not real life. The internet's not real life. Sometimes it is because like it's a difference between because I've been recognized out in public
Mm-hmm.
before, right? And that's only because of my internet personality and persona, right?
Right.
So if you keep thinking that oh this internet stuff won't catch up to me in the real life, like a part of it will seep into your everyday,
Mm-hmm.
not every day, but so part of it will seep into some parts of your life. Like you might play pickup basketball with someone that knows you, and if you're playing, if you're if you're out in public and someone recognizes you, but in like for making this negative content, I wouldn't want that to be my life.
No, yeah.
I
Somebody
wouldn't want
stopping.
that to be no, yeah. You
Yeah.
remember when those people would like see Tucker Carlson like just eating out and they would just like they would just like keep yelling at him and all that. I'm like,
Yeah.
that sounds like that's a miserable life you must have picked, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, being in front, like for me, it's this idea of I like making genuine content because then I can continue to be genuine always. Like I don't have to put on a mask or switch up to be like, hey, like appreciate me. Like, like it's not this way of like, oh, I want you to like me or I want you to not like me as long as I get these likes and I get whatever message I'm conveying out. But if I'm trying to have an actual message, it has to come from a genuine space, right? Or if like
Right.
I'm trying to if I'm trying to make any type of content, which is this. I mean, this is up to basically you're going to be at episode 175, right? And as you said, like evergreen type content. So like whenever somebody picks it up, they can just go back and be like, okay, from episode 10 or whatever, and be like, oh yeah, he's been like, the same guy has been trying to, convey messages and stories and people's stories and how they progress through life and this is the culmination of that. Like, but for me to be like, all right, now I'm gonna go on TikTok and be like, I hate this shoe and you should too because of this. Like I've never understood that. I never will. Like, and I get like opinions matter, but at the same time, it's like, why be negative? Why announce like my biggest thing, and I don't know if you've ever seen this or if you somebody that announces they're gonna stop listening or watching something. Like
Mm,
I never understood it and I'll never understand it because I feel like why did you need to make an announcement of on your page that I'm gonna stop watching Secret Base like that, like
yeah.
why did you need to comment that under the video? Like I've never understood that, and I feel like that goes towards the same thing of like a lot of these TikTok videos that are just basically negative.
Now I don't now there is a thing where it's like if you're being if you're being negative but also being constructive about it, right?
Hmm.
Do you remember recently Marcus Brownlee had a YouTube video. It was like this is the worst product I've reviewed.
Yes,
But
and yeah.
I'm seeing that being like, hey, this man has done a decade of tech reviews. His
Hmm.
opinion is very valid, and he's not trying to. This is I you like trust in that he's being honest about the stuff, and you know that he's gonna bring receipts as to why, right?
Right.
It's not like I don't like this player and I don't like this person and here's why you shouldn't. And it's like you didn't give any concrete reasons, didn't give any concrete. Like that's a little bit different. I think that's completely different than just being like, I hate insert group or this here, and that's like your entire shtick.
Hmm.
I think it's a little. I think the internet, honestly, it's like everything's a resume. It's like
Yeah.
if you if you make negative content every day for 3 years and try to like switch, everybody's gonna be like, "What's this guy's deal?" Right?
Hmm.
I think that's the content. I think that's the constant content creator journey where you see all these like either these big content creators try to flip who they are as soon as the stuff that gets them to where they want to be popularity wise start to weigh down on them. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a major difference on that part. But no, I think that there's something to be said for just being genuine about content creation and not letting not letting someone else behind a screen, like not letting a couple people behind the screen get to you. But if a bunch of people are saying something, it is you should take the time to like listen to the feedback, or like or be aware of the feedback and be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you guys are all saying this. I did like I looked at it again, but like you're right or you're wrong. But like
Mm-hmm.
if it's like a bunch of people, if it's like 5 people versus like 500 people, it's a little bit like it'll one makes me stop and think a little bit more.
Right.
But I still like me reading YouTube comments. Like I'll read the like when a secret base video drops, I read the comments
Mm-hmm.
because I and it's not because I'm like worried about it, but it's also it's because I want people to, if something's with the video, I want people to be able to point it out. And like if I there's something that's like your personal preference where it's like I don't like this man's voice, okay, that's fine. But that's something I can't change. But if someone's like, "Oh, hey, the audio isn't working in my left ear from these 30 seconds," I can look back and be like, "Oh man, I missed that. Let me be more cognizant of that the next time I make a video."
Yeah.
Like there's different kinds of like in terms of like critique and then like a preference, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a constant like waffling back and forth in terms of just like this is what sometimes it feels like a preference of your content, and sometimes there's like an actual critique, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing the difference between the two is like a really big thing in this space for sure.
Yeah. Well, because I followed you when you first started your TikTok, and I was like, I want to see how you are going to progress this, because I felt like TikTok was such a crazy, and still is a crazy landscape of like, how do you get your following, right? And one thing I loved about watching your progression was that you were trying things, but at the same time you were still like, I'm gonna push out this type of content, this like long form, more than a minute of like sports content. You just kept pushing it every day. I was like watching all your videos and being like, oh man, he's going for it. He's going for it.
Yeah,
And
and,
yeah.
and you
No,
know
go
what
ahead.
and you know why I did that is because I first got popular on TikTok duetting food videos.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was duetting food videos because there's a lot of kitchen and cooking content out there that's really aesthetically pleasing, really cool. And I feel like a lot of people might relate to the fact that every recipe you see on TikTok looks cool, but in terms of you getting off of work and wanting to like make the recipe, I feel like for a lot of us was unrealistic. So I started
Mm-hmm.
to duet a video where I would like stop the video when like the recipe got too like late, like got too lazy for the recipe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like someone will be making they'll be making something and then like they're cutting an onion and I'm like, I'm not doing that after like a, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like this
yeah.
is stuff this like like stuff like that, and it became a meme and became a bit, and I got a nice following off of that. But then I realized I was like, hey, I'm not a I'm not a food duetter.
Right, yeah. You're not
That's
chef
not
reactions.
I'm like I wasn't I was like I'm a content creator, and I wasn't taking TikTok seriously at all in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I was like, this is a I just treated it like it was Instagram stories and whatever. But as soon as I got like I was like, okay, now I have to make this pivot into to sports. But when I went to sports, nobody like the people weren't really rocking with the videos because that's not what they signed up for. They didn't sign up for
Mm-hmm.
sports. They signed up for because they like food, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I had to, it's still an ongoing fight with that main channel. And I made like other TikTok channels just for sports because I was like, okay, I need to start over because it doesn't really mesh.
Mm-hmm.
So that my main TikTok account is just really weird. It's just really weird. But like YouTube, it's easier. I feel like it's easier for YouTube if you want to do a video that is like a slight pivot, but at the
Right.
same time, like that people will show it, but like people will be shown it if they actually
Mm-hmm.
like that. That's a little bit different. So
Nah, yeah,
yeah,
but still, like I like when you do the green screen couch videos and you explain it like, this is the problem why, you know, Or
Yeah.
this is why I don't know. I'm gonna use a terrible version that's only pertaining to the Knicks. This is why Julius Randle is the reason why the Knicks lost against the Pacers. So
Right. Yeah, like, it's like be like, yeah, he was hurt. You know, this is like no, so, but it's like something like that. But I think that whenever I convey a take or something like that, I've always
Mhm,
tried to like go because if I had to do the same takes in the style of like say like a Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless, you would just go to Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless, right?
mhm,
Whereas for me, I'm like, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something that I believe. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm not going to like try to antagonize you if you think I'm wrong. I'm not trying to be like, oh no, but I'm not trying to like
mhm.
come off as the person that knows everything. I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. That sounds exhausting, right?
Mhm,
So I've kind of tried to lean into that, and I use the green screen as just an extra way to just like have my videos pop out a little bit more because
mhm.
I'm not trying to like yell and get your attention, but I'm also still trying to be like make the best content in a certain unique way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I want to definitely round this out with a little bit of sneaker talk, but the since you watch a lot of basketball, has there been any models or like sneakers in general from your entire time of watching basketball that just like stand out to you? And were you able to get them, or are you just like, all right, these are just cool, these are cool for the players, or like none of that, or does any of that pique your interest until like, I want to try these out and ball in
Oh,
these?
I got sent. I got sent a pair of shoes. You want to see them?
Yeah, sure.
All right, I'll be right back. All right, so this company sent me a pair of shoes, and it's called a dizygotic.
Mm-hmm.
So the shoes are intentionally mismatched. So this shoe is based on the Malice at the Palace.
Right, right.
So this shoe is the Ben Wallace 3, and then inside the whatever the sole is, this the sole or something inside
That's the
here.
insole.
Insole, sorry, insole. It has the exact score of what it was when the Malice of the Palace started,
Mm-hmm.
and then this one is the Ron Artest shoe, and it's different colors. And so this is a shoe that when it got sent to me, I started to get why because the sneakers I started to get why people really like certain sneakers because
Mm-hmm.
it's more there are so many cool details on this shoe, like right even here, like this is like the spilled drink, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many details that you could put in a shoe, so I get it, I understand. I was like, oh okay, I understand like why like certain shoes, if like you want to get them and whatever, like they may look cool, but they also like might have like more meaning and stuff like that.
No, yeah.
That's like
A
hidden
lot
details.
a lot of sneakers now are based around different stories. And the thing is, like back in the day, a lot of these sneakers did not have these stories, and the stories came from the people like telling the story or of a story. Like, Jordan flu game, for instance, just a black and red Jordan 12. And you know right, I hope I don't get, I think that's the right shoe. Yes, it has to be, because I better have that correct. But the but the Jordan flu game, let me double check before I get roasted in the comments here.
Well, if it makes you feel
Yeah.
better, if it makes you feel better, I've never had a pair of Jordans.
Well, I'm pretty sure we should probably say which, some of these brands will definitely probably reach out if they hear this episode. So
Well,
they
I
want to
mean,
they want
hey,
to help, they want to hook you up. But they are black and red Jordan 12s. But the story behind them is that Jordan played the flu game in them, and so now, from now on, since then, since 1996, since when he wore that shoe, 1997.
yeah, that wasn't his last series, but like the series
No,
before that, the
yeah,
last finals before that, yeah.
right, yeah.
Whatever.
And he so now whenever a black and red Jordan 12 gets dropped, which is one coming out, I think this year also, they call it the flu games. And so that's how, like, that's just like an example, right? So this one with the Mouse at the Palace, it's interesting because the it's a brand that like it's a brand new brand, and they're
Okay.
trying to bring in people with a story, but it's also just like the idea of they're telling the story for themselves, not for like none of these players in the game were wearing that shoe, right? None of the it's like we're using it like a t-shirt, like how you put, like if they were like we're gonna cartoonify Mouse at the Palace and now sell this t-shirt, but
Yeah.
they did it but in shoe form. That's how I see it. So
Mm.
it's interesting. It's interesting for a brand to try come out the gate trying that, because it's one, it's a hard sell because two mismatched shoes. You're selling it off of more. You're more selling it off the story than it is the heritage behind the shoe or any of this extra stuff that like say a Nike has or Jordan has or even Adidas, right? And it's that's why I was like, it was interesting to me to see influencers. I don't know if you call yourself an influencer or a content creator, that get gifted the shoe, and so is the onus on you to sell the shoe to a fan base that knows about the story of the Mouse of the Palace, or like that's
I
yeah,
think that I got sent the shoe because I am a Detroit Pistons fan. I think that
right,
that was the where I think that was the main thing where it wasn't like
hmm
I wasn't like a Vancouver Grizzlies fan back in the day, and they're like, "Oh, let's give me some Malice of the Palace shoes." And you're like, "This really doesn't mean as much to me as you think it." But the Malice in the Palace, Detroit, like I will. And again, I wasn't paid. I was just given the shoes,
no,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm not.
yeah.
It's not my job to get you to buy them. But I did say that like, hey, I will get this shoe and I will show you everything that I like about it. If you
hmm
want to buy it or not, that's out of my control, you know. So I don't really feel some type of way, honestly, because my theory with doing sponsored content is that I work with brands that I rock with or would wear or would, if it's a food brand or like I would eat the food or whatever.
hmm
So I think it's more genuine, but there are some times where you'll see a sponsor and you're like, that person doesn't use this at all.
Yeah, I think I
It's like
see that
it's
a
yeah.
lot of the time. So,
And there are certain times where like I will get thrown I've gotten thrown sponsorships in the past where I'm like, I'm new to this, but you won me over with the product, but I'm not gonna be like, I've had this product for 6 years. Like you just gave it to me and it's good. I tried it for a week, tried it for 2 weeks. It was dope, but I'm not gonna like come off as an expert in that kind of product that gets sent to me and stuff. I'll be like, here's me, a regular dude.
hmm
I use this sometimes.
yeah, it's. I mean, I haven't or gotten to that point where people are like, can you do some sponsored content for me? But I have been in a situation where somebody sent me something and I am, they're asking me to I don't know if they listen to this podcast, so I don't know if they're. But they asking me to wear it in a video or episode and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the perfect moment to be like, all right, I could put it on, I'm really appreciative of getting something. And it's like that balance of like, I don't want to, like, I feel like if I get something, I don't want to let somebody down, because obviously a lot of this stuff is like they put their hard-earned money into this, and they're spending their money to get it to me, in order for me to get it in front of the eyes, whatever little eyes I have, and hopefully that will spark a sale or two, is what I see it as.
If anyone ever sends me stuff, I will always make it not a priority, but I'll make an effort to thank them in some kind of video form.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying go get this, but I'm like, thank you to this brand that sent me these shoes or something. That thank you to this brand that sent me whatever. I have a working relationship with Home Field Apparel, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it's like a collegiate apparel place. But for like the first 2 or 3 years, they would send me stuff, but I always for like 3 years I was like, I will promote your brand for free for like these three, because what happened was when a bunch of people 3 4 years ago got furloughed from Vox Media,
Mm-hmm.
they did a fundraiser and raised about $90,000, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, because you guys took so much good care of my colleagues, I will just promote your brand because of what you did, off the goodwill of
Yeah.
that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that understanding that a lot of these brand deals can just turn into like relationships after a while. Like I've always thought about like that, so that's why I'm like a thank you would suffice, but like at the same time, only if it's sponsored, I'll be like, this video was sponsored by, blah,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll be like, oh no, thank you, Home Field, for the shirt or something like that. I think it's two different things. I would like to say,
Yeah.
honestly,
For
yeah.
sure, for sure. But yeah, the beginning part of my question was like, have you seen any sneakers that like call out to you while you've been watching, playoffs such as in this,
Oh man, oh sorry. I was, jeez, I forgot that was a question. I have seen this is the WNBA, the Sabrina
Mhm.
Ionescu's, like the
Yeah.
Sabrina twos that just came out.
Oh yeah, the twos. Yeah,
They look really nice.
they kind of look like Kobe's. I know. I had Nick DePaula on the podcast, and
Mm,
he unveiled them on the internet recently. At like, I think he was at a Liberty game, and he had like they like gave him a pair to hold and show on his Instagram and Twitter, and I am a fan. I am a fan.
yeah, I'm not really. I've never really watched a basketball game and been like, man, these shoes.
Really?
No, I've never. That's never come to mind.
That's me in a nutshell. Like a
Unless they're
lot.
like, unless they're like, unless they're like a different color. Unless it's like I was watching the Fever game a couple of days ago, and I think Caitlin Clark's shoes were like, it was a color of green
Hmm.
that like really you're like, oh, Caitlin Clark is the person in the green. If for some reason I didn't know what Caitlin Clark looked like, I'd be like, the person in the green shoes is killing it out there. You know what I'm saying? But I've never really watched I've never really watched any form of a sport, honestly, and been like looking at the feet. Like usually I look at like accessories in NBA where it's like, oh, this dude's like, oh, Dwight Howard's wearing double shooting sleeves. I thought
Hmm.
when we first did that, that was a big deal. Where it's like, oh, LeBron's wearing the face mask. It's like, oh, that's what kind of stands out to me more than like I've never like watched a game and been like, the only time I've ever been like watched a certain game is when I'm like, oh, their shoes are like a different color, like they're mismatching their shoes. That's what stands
Hmm.
out to me a little bit more. But even then, I'm not I'm not being like, what shoes is Paul George wearing today?
Really? Oh
No,
man, that's me.
that's never been my curiosity, honestly.
I look at the starting lineup or whatever, and then I'll be like, okay. And then as the game goes on, I'm like, oh wow, he's really wearing those. Okay, cool. And then be like, that's literally
That's never been me
that's
ever.
me.
Yeah.
That you got we're gonna have to change this mindset. Because I feel like that's the original uh like shoe marketing was basketball team, like basketball playing and NBA, ABA, I feel like once it got televised, it was always like, oh, I gotta be wearing what the basketball players are wearing. So for me, that I feel like I've always thought about it from the jump. Like whenever I started watching basketballs when I was a kid, I was always just like, oh, I gotta be like, be like Mike. You gotta be like Mike.
Right. I think the times when I would look at shoes is when I was actually like playing against a team, right? Because
Hmm.
when you're playing in the AAU circuit, I only did that for like 2 months or whatever. When you were playing in that, and if you saw a team wearing like all the new additions of a shoe, you're like, oh, we're gonna get cooked. Like that was like that not like that was not you. It wasn't
That's
always
maybe that's the
guaranteed.
trauma. That's the
But
trauma.
I'm like, oh, are they all wearing the new KDs? These weren't even in the magazine. We're gonna lose by 70.
Maybe
That's
this
where I'm like, okay, yeah. I look at the
we
shoes and be like, oh, you guys are wearing the actual like no,
we have we have figured it out.
yep.
This is why you don't like new sneakers. It's because every time you got cooked by somebody in new sneakers, and now you're like, I can't look at new sneakers. I don't even want to see sneakers on other basketball players' feet because I brought back to the time where I got put 70 on my head and
Not, but for me back in the day, it was still always socks, right? Like
hmm
I was in high school when like the Nike Elite socks came out
yeah.
and were hard to find,
hmm
right? Where before all these Nike Elite socks had all of these colors and stuff to them, there was only one pair of Nike Elite socks, right? And
hmm
you finding them was hard. So if you saw a team that, well, I wasn't playing basketball at the time, but whenever I would go to our high school's basketball game, when you saw a team on the other end of the court that had the Nike Elite socks, you knew that they were about business, right?
hmm
They're here to hoop, right? And our team was good, but it's like knowing a team meant business, whatever. And then from then on, when everyone started getting the white Nike Elite socks, the
hmm
black Nike Elite socks would come out, and then you'd be
Right.
like, oh, you got a team with the new, fresh off of the East Bay black Elite socks. You're like, oh, that's how I've always like. It's always been like certain types of new gear where it's like I remember when the shooting sleeve
hmm
started to have like the webbing,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and that was like
The padding on
exclusive.
it.
Yeah, the padding, and that was
Yeah.
exclusive. And you're like, okay, so that's really how I think about it versus like because I can recognize that it's new from wherever.
Yeah.
I can't. I will. It's hard for me nowadays to look at an athlete and be like, I can't tell off of like eyesight how old or new those shoes are.
hmm
Like someone could be wearing like the Concords, right? And that shoe's been around forever. But
hmm
like someone could be wearing a shoe that's not out yet. And I'm just not gonna like I just am not gonna like be like, oh, okay, I need to know. I've never done that. I don't know.
We gotta change that. I'm gonna have to start.
All
I'm gonna have
right.
to, first of all, I gotta have to have a heart to heart with Iffy about this first, and then we're gonna be like, all right, every week, all right, you gotta check these out. All right, this one.
All right. Bet.
But towards the end of the Kofi, we're towards the end of the podcast. I do ask another question at the end of the podcast, and I want you to deals with a little bit of visualization. I want you to think back to the time where you was about to get those Addy Zero Prime SPs, because we're gonna pick that one since you love those. And I want you to transport yourself behind your younger self. And what would you tell your younger self as they open that box?
We did it. That we did it because that was a time where I think those were the first shoes I really paid for my own money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I was working, working like mowing lawns and stuff because I wasn't like I didn't have like a job like a high school summer job or whatever
Mm-hmm.
until like my junior year because my freshman sophomore year I wasn't like my parents were like you need to focus on your studying and all of that and whatever. So yeah, that was the first and that was a shoe that I felt more connected to, I guess, because I had worked so hard
Mm-hmm.
to get. Like I didn't like ask my parents and then they got it for me. It was like oh hey yeah I did these lawns, I shoveled this snow, I all that stuff. So I think that would like the side like just the weight of like you did it right. I think that was so important to me when I first opened those shoes, and I was like, all right, let's break records,
Mm-hmm.
let's keep winning, all that stuff. So I think that was like my feeling. I was like, oh, it's complete. Like these are the best spikes on the market,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. And like, and you have them now. Make it work.
For real, for real. I mean, I love that you put the times on it, and you was setting yourself up to just destroy
I
some
I
records.
was driven back then, man.
Hmm.
I'll tell you that. I'll
But
tell you that, man.
yo, thank you so much for jumping on, and for everybody out there, we say each week, wear your kicks. Peace.